about writing effective proposals is I like to approach it from the perspective of what the county is going to look for when you're actually submitting a proposal. I don't really tell you how to get into the writing techniques, and you'll hopefully hear some of that with the next speaker. But my goal is to really tell you the things that we see, the pitfalls that we've encountered, and how to make sure that when you're submitting a proposal, you're doing so in the best light. And so what I like for you to be able to take away is kind of like a one-page checklist. So while I'll go into each one and give you some examples and give you some experiences we've had in these areas, I like to kind of present it in a checklist format so you can kind of take a look at it next time before you're actually submitting a proposal to the county or to any government agency. And before I actually get started, the other thing I will say is a lot of times when I talk to companies, whether they're large, small, minority-owned businesses, it doesn't really matter, but sometimes people, feel like if there's an incumbent or if this is something the county has been doing for a long time, or they're new to the industry or new to government work, that there really isn't an opportunity for them to get their foot in the door. And I strongly encourage you, I know the folks in my office and in Montgomery County as a whole, we encourage businesses of any type to please submit proposals because, there's no way to ensure that you absolutely won't get a contract more than if you don't actually submit the proposal. So please, please, please do not be discouraged. I strongly encourage each and every one of you to continue the efforts in participating in the procurement process for Montgomery County and for any other government agency. So in getting started, one of the first things I talk about, and I kind of categorize it for you in different areas, is appearance. When we talk about meeting people for the first time in terms of what we see physically, we talk about first impressions. And it's really no different when you're talking about a proposal that you're submitting to a government agency. Whether it's for $5,000, $25,000, or $1 million, appearance does matter. Now, you won't necessarily get evaluated on your appearance, but again, you may not be a successful offeror in a particular solicitation, but depending on how great your proposal was and how the appearance was, if there is an opportunity down the road or someone needed some smaller level work, they may take a look at that, or they may remember your proposal and say, hey, let me give this firm a call, see if they're available for this other type of work. So with the appearance, one of the things I talk about is to clearly label your package with the solicitation number. And some of these things I say you might think about, well, that's pretty straightforward, but we've had multi-million-dollar companies miss something like this. And I can't tell you how many hours it takes. We've had instances where proposals have gone to different places, or where proposals have been in a different area because they were not clearly marked. We did not know that it was a response to an actual solicitation. So while it may seem very straightforward, it's very, very important to clearly label your package and to make sure that you're putting the accurate solicitation number so it can go in the right folder, so that when we do submit proposals to the evaluation committee, yours is definitely one of them, and we have a record that it was submitted timely. Like I said, we've had such situations where proposals have been in different areas. Someone will call us and say, well, I submitted a proposal, and we're looking at it, and we're like, no, we don't have a record of it. And it just had, someone's name on it, or it had no association with any solicitation number. We get so much mail on a daily basis that if it's not clearly labeled, your proposal might not even get seen in the light of day. So again, I want to strongly stress that. Please make sure that you include your contact information. We had a solicitation where we had a proposal that was submitted, and we had a question, and we needed to contact the firm. We went from the front page all the way through, all the way to the back page, and we could not find any telephone number, any email address, any contact name. We actually went through 411 and the internet at that time in terms of, because we had a company name. But there was no contact information on any single page in that entire proposal. And again, resources spent really trying to track down that firm to make sure we could get some clarification to their proposal. The other thing is to please make sure that you get your package organized into sections based on the RFP. In Montgomery County, most requests for proposals, you're going to see a section called proposal submissions. And that really tailors for you the types of things, and I'll go into that a little later, but the types of things that we're looking for as part of your proposal submission. So when you're submitting your package to us, if you label it accordingly and you put it in those appropriate sections, again, you're going to better ensure that the evaluation committee does not accidentally miss something that's important as part of the evaluation. We've had situations where people will submit things, and that goes to some of the things that I'll reemphasize a little later, but we've had people submit things and there's no sort of break. It's just like one entire binder with no kind of break. So when you have a group of individuals who are sitting and looking at, tens and tens of proposals, and they get to one where they're really having to sift through to figure out where something is or where an information might be, it makes it really difficult for them to be able to focus and for them to be able to know which ones were you intending to be considered for which areas of your proposal. Sometimes we get proposals that are 30 or 40 for a single solicitation. We had one recently where I think the proposals were more than 100. So if you imagine looking at that quantity of proposals and just getting a binder just kind of dumped on you with no sort of categorization, it makes it really difficult for the evaluation committee to know that they've really seen everything that you intended them to see for the various areas. Lastly, in terms of appearance, to really make sure that your proposals are neatly organized. I can't tell you how many times we look at the clock and it's 10 minutes before something is due and people are rushing in, asking to borrow staplers and paper clips and tape and pens and pencils. And as I said in the very beginning, it's not limited to a local company. It's not limited to small business or minority business. I mean, the largest of the largest will come in at times and do that as well. So it's really important. People spend overtime, they spend weekends, they spend a lot of time responding to the core of the solicitation, but they miss certain things that I'm going to go over today, and that can have a significant impact on your actual evaluation. That can have a significant impact on whether your proposal even gets considered. So you might have the best proposal, and because of some of the things that you might miss that we talk about today, we might not even be able to consider it. So again, you don't want to submit a proposal that's been stapled together 10 minutes before. You don't want to come to a government agency asking to borrow pens and pencils so you can write down names or write down information in the last few minutes, because that does impact the quality of the proposal that you submit. The next section, I don't know, Grace, if you can kind of scroll up a little bit, but the next section is the proposal accuracy. Please verify the due date and the due time. And I'm going to reemphasize this towards the bottom in terms of timeliness. But please make sure, oftentimes we have solicitation amendments that modify the due date or the due time of a solicitation. Please make sure that if you have a team who's responding to a solicitation and they're on vacation or something unexpected has occurred, that you guys have a backup. We've had instances where we've tried to reach out to people and either email boxes are full, we received an incorrect email address, telephone numbers, the voicemails are not, accepting voicemails. This is a way, oftentimes things happen while a solicitation is on the street and we need to reach you or we need to update you with information. So it's really important. We always post any changes on our website. So if a solicitation due date and time has changed, please make sure the first place you're looking at is on our website periodically to see if a change has occurred. When you download a solicitation, based on feedback we received from businesses as well as just regular citizens interested in county business, if you have the choice now of whether to sign in, and we've simplified the sign-in process online to, I think, just like a name and an email address and a company name. So we've simplified that. You can sign in if you want to download a solicitation at no cost, or you don't have to. But we've clearly noted that unless you sign in to download a solicitation, if changes occur, you may not be on that notification list. So it's very, very important to understand that very beginning sign-in process. It's very critical that the due date and due time is verified, not just from the initial solicitation, but for any amendments that occur. And while we will always post it online, some of the pitfalls that we do see is staffing changes, staffing turnovers, and you need to monitor if someone's working on a live solicitation and things happen internally in your company that someone's following up to see if changes have occurred. Proposal submission location and directions verified. This is critical. Again, I can't tell you how many times our front desk receives calls from bidders or offerors who say, you know, they're on Rockville Pike and they see this big building called Marlowe's Furniture, and, you know, can they be directed to exactly where our office is? Or, you know, they're a few traffic lights away and, you know, it's a couple of minutes before 3. I can tell you I have no way of stopping time. I can guarantee you that. I can't guarantee you much, but I can guarantee you that. So I strongly encourage, for those that may not be familiar, we have people submit proposals from out of state. We have people submit proposals for the first time. If you are unfamiliar with our location in downtown Rockville with parking and paying for parking and stuff, sometimes it might take a little while to find a place to park, to pay, and then to actually come up to our office. So if that's the case, I strongly encourage you to know exactly where our office is, where you intend to park, what the parking fees are, so on the day that you're turning it in, you're not having to rush or accidentally missing something. The proposal submission requirements are verified. This is critical. An evaluation committee can only evaluate you on what is submitted. We get calls often where someone has said, please, we've worked all weekend or we've worked all night. You know, we left a section out. You know, can you please accept it? We cannot. We cannot. It's not only regulatory-wise, but in terms of fairness to other vendors who respond. The due date and time is set by regulation in terms of whether or not we can accept anything late. So what you submit is all the evaluation committee can evaluate you on. So it's very critical to take a look at the proposal submission section in the RFP to make sure that every item that we've stated is somewhere clearly labeled and clearly indicated within your proposal submission package. Solicitation amendments verified for material and non-material updates. Again, very, very important. Oftentimes we find out from folks just like you, an offeror may call and say, hey, I think you have this listed incorrectly, or hey, I'm concerned that the manner in which this is stated, you know, you might only be looking at one firm. And whenever we get those types of calls, we take it very seriously. We take a look at the document and we may be issuing solicitation amendments. We might have to issue a solicitation amendment because something with the project occurred or something with the budget occurred. So again, it's very important. Oftentimes when we change something, it's the actual quotation sheet or it's actual submission requirements or it's actual changes in the evaluation criteria. All critical things that could impact your evaluation and how your proposal is reviewed. So please make sure that when you first download that solicitation, if you're interested in responding, that you do the option that allows you to sign in so we have your contact information. Periodically check the website. Return the solicitation amendments. You have options. In our invitation for bid, there's a small box on the bottom left-hand side of the first page that allows you, where you sign, to acknowledge any solicitation amendments. Our solicitation amendment documents themselves have a signature area where you can sign and date, and you can actually fax those back to us in terms of the actual solicitation amendment if it's something like a due date, due time. But I strongly encourage you guys, when it comes to major changes in someone's proposal, changes in pricing structure, those things need to be sealed, so that solicitation amendment should be acknowledged and included as part of your proposal package. When the evaluation committee reviews something and they see that something has been altered under a solicitation amendment and they review your proposal and you're still answering the initial question that does not include any of the updates, that's less points that they're allowed to give to your particular proposal. So it's very, very important to look out for and acknowledge those solicitation amendments and adjust as needed your actual proposal as a result of those. Proposal package review to ensure completeness and required submissions are included. I say this because we had a situation several years back where it was an actual incumbent who contacted our office after the solicitation due date and time. This was a multi-million-dollar solicitation. It was a multi-award. The existing contract was coming up for expiration, so we were going back out under an RFP to resubmit. The type of service commodity that we were purchasing under this RFP, it was very heavily commodity-based, but there was a large service component to it. So in this particular RFP, while it normally wouldn't be, in this particular one, cost was weighed very heavily. Because once you got around the service and the support, what they were ultimately delivering to the county were products. So the department wanted to heavily weigh the price component on this particular RFP because of that, because of the higher service, because of the higher commodity needs that they were going to have under the resulting contract. So in that particular case, the incumbent called us not long after the solicitation closed and told us that in reviewing what they had sent to us, they realized that they had missed, when they collated, the cost section. So in this particular RFP, out of 100, the cost section was 40 points. So you're talking 40%. For a potential multi-million-dollar, multi-year contract, and right off the bat, they're going to have to get a 0 for that section. So 40 points lost. And I can tell you it was hard for us because this company had done really well in the past, and I can certainly imagine how difficult it was for them when they took the time and resources to put together a really good proposal. But some of these things that I mentioned, they didn't give themselves time to actually review the setup of their proposal. Did they collate it correctly? Were the required sections in there? Was there anything that was missed? Those things that we think we'll just give a couple of minutes to before we turn in a proposal really lost their opportunity for getting the resulting award. So I highly stress that oftentimes we spend so much time on the actual content writing, which is very important, but then that whole time has been lost because we didn't take the opportunity to kind of pause, give ourselves enough time, and see if everything we had done is actually included in what you're about to submit to the county government. The next area is content. So again, giving yourself time to really make sure that your proposal is complete, it's concise, and it includes the description for each submission item. We've had several instances, I would say in the last year or two, where we're looking at proposals, we're talking to the evaluation committee, and they're telling us, well, we know this firm can do it because they've had a contract with the county before for this, but they haven't included this item in here. And of course, the evaluation committee can only evaluate based on what's included, whether they've done business with that company before or not. But interestingly enough, when we've done full circle and talked to these firms who have had prior contracts with the county and asked, well, it was clearly said that you had to submit this. How come you didn't? And they say, well, we were the incumbent, so we assumed that you already knew, our capabilities or knew our resumes or knew who our folks were. And like I said, there's nothing guaranteed. We can guarantee you an opportunity. We can't guarantee you a contract. You have to put forth the effort. So some of the mistakes or pitfalls that existing companies make is that they just assume, because they have done business with us before, that they don't have to take the same care and the same time and the same commitment in the next proposal that they receive. And what I want to stress here is that every proposal that you submit has to be genuine to that particular solicitation, to those particular solicitation requirements, regardless of what you may or may not have done in the past. So each one has to stand on its own. Make sure that you include resumes, writing samples, and other required submissions. Oftentimes, we get great proposals, but when we ask for certain things that you'll see in the criteria, such as writing samples, or if it's producer services, we may ask for a copy of prior videos that you've produced or prior programs that you've done, and those things do not get submitted as part of your proposal package. So it's really important, not just your technical proposal, not just your cost proposal, but if there are other documents that we're asking for, please make sure that they do get included. The other thing is to make sure that you're emphasizing the evaluation criteria. Every proposal, request for proposal that we issue will have a section called Method of Award. You really need to read, pay attention, and understand what that method of award is. Most of the time, the method of award will not only list the actual evaluation criteria that the committee will be looking at against your proposal, but it'll also let you know how many points each criteria will be weighed against. So when you see a criteria that's 30 points, 25 points, 40 points, you want to make sure that in your proposal you have absolutely addressed that criteria, whether it's qualifications, whether it's prior projects, whether it's capacity in terms of your portfolio of projects that you're currently doing. Whatever the criteria are and whatever the weights are, please make sure that your proposal identifies those areas. A lot of time we see companies running into situations where they may have really great glossary brochures about their company, and it might tote a lot of great, percentages of what they've done, dollars, new awards, certifications, and that's wonderful. But if you focus your efforts in putting all that information in your proposal, and that's not what the county's looking for in terms of what they're going to evaluate your proposal on, then you've done yourself a disservice. So again, I strongly encourage that when you're looking at our proposals, you're looking at the method of award section and the evaluation criteria and making sure that your proposal really, really addresses point by point what those criteria are, and spending your time where the criteria have the most points weighted. Make sure to include any exceptions, whether it's technical or other requirements, as part of your proposal. A lot of times solicitations will close, and afterwards we'll get a call that said, well, I really had a problem with your solicitation in this area, or, the reason I really didn't address this in my proposal is because I wasn't really sure what you were asking for, or it wasn't clear. Another thing I'm going to strongly encourage you, and we do not mind, we actually would prefer, if you contact us while the solicitation is still on the street, let us know. Do you see any issues with the solicitation? Is there anything that you think needs to be altered or modified, or something that needs to be clarified? If something is not clear, please let the procurement specialist know. Please let the technical contact know. Every request for proposal or invitation for a bid we issue, right on the main cover page, will have the name of the procurement specialist that handles that solicitation, as well as the name of a technical contact within the using department. We give you their names, we give you their numbers, sometimes even their email addresses are included. So I strongly encourage, if you have questions, ask them beforehand. It gives us an opportunity to review it, consider it, and make any applicable changes. So again, what you're submitting is going to put your proposal in the best light. If you ask for it afterwards, we can't change something, and if it's something that we're looking at that really might have some merit, then what we may have to do is cancel the solicitation, and then everyone has to spend the time and efforts in resubmitting their proposal. So again, if there's any questions, ask them ahead of time, but make sure that you're including any exceptions, true exceptions, in your proposal. Sometimes government agencies have certain codes, laws, state laws that they have to abide by. So there may be certain terms and conditions that you may not be comfortable with, but that the government may not be able to waive. So you want to be really careful. If you have those questions, again, ask them ahead of time. Ask them so that we can address them. And when we address them in a solicitation amendment, whether you've asked for it or not, everyone who's on record for that solicitation will get a copy of what those Q&As are. So it's very important. If you put an exception in, make sure your proposal still considers the fact that you might have to comply with that. Putting an exception in, while it's important to note it so that we're aware, doesn't necessarily guarantee that in negotiations the county's going to agree to waive or alter that particular exception that you've put in your proposal. So again, ask, but ask ahead of time. And that way we can address it for everyone. Making sure, and we talked about this earlier and recently in terms of how you're combining your proposal. A lot of times we do see annual reports, statistics, glossary information you've created for your company, marketing materials. Again, all of that information is great. If it doesn't tie to a evaluation criteria and you feel strongly you still want the county to know about that, you can include it, but just put it towards the back in terms of an appendix. A lot of times we'll say if you want to add other information or additional information, just separate it out in an appendix, because like I said, if the county has 30, 40, 50 proposals it's reviewing, you really want them to pay attention to the core information in your proposal that's going to relate to the criteria that it's being evaluated on, and you don't want them to get distracted by these other items. So if you put them in a separate section or mark them as an appendix, then it'll be easier for the QSC, which is the evaluation committee, when they're reviewing your proposal. Again, we touched on this briefly, but to really clearly understand what is the jurisdiction looking for. In an invitation for bid, it's heavily commodity-based. It's pretty clear-cut. We're going to really describe things ad nauseum to really let you know this is what we're looking for. In a request for proposal, we might have, a lot of information in there. We might have some details. We might have certain requirements, but we're really kind of letting you know where we are, what we're looking to do, what we hope the outcome to be, and we're really looking for you to give us your approach and your methodology and how you think you can best meet those needs. If you truly feel that somehow a solicitation was way off the mark, again, please call our office or call the technical contact, because if you submit a proposal, if we're asking for ABC and you submit a proposal that's for XYZ, there's going to be a huge disconnect. And again, that's going to impact the manner in which your proposal is evaluated. We want you to be creative. We want to hear your approach, but we want you to be creative and provide us your approach, your steps, your methodology that's going to meet the county's needs. If you see that the county's asking for this and you're like, no, I think they should do this, and that's what you're submitting a proposal on, and we've seen this happen where the proposal completely misses the mark on what the county's requirements are. Again, your proposal will not get the most points in that situation. So bring us your approach and methodology, but at the end of the day, make sure that it's tied into how it's going to meet the county's requirements based on what the scope is for that particular solicitation. Second to last is timeliness. I briefly mentioned this before, but I will strongly emphasize it now. When you have a proposal that's delivered, please make sure it's done prior to the due date and due time. If there's anything you leave this seminar, workshop, training with today, that's the one thing I will ask you to leave with, because you can be the best company, you can have the best proposal, you can have the best team, you can have the lowest price, you can have the best value, but if your proposal or your bid is not in our office, not the office 2 doors down, which happened recently, not the office downstairs, not the office in a different building, to the address that's on the solicitation, by the date that's on the solicitation, by the time that's on the solicitation. And why am I going so crazy and emphasizing that? We've had people call us who are like in the middle of a car accident and the police is trying to take the report saying that they're trying to get to our office to submit a proposal. I can't accept it. David told us, our director told me when he first came to the county that when he was with Fairfax, that he actually had someone come in, not only say he was in a car accident, but literally had clothes that were tattered and had like blood on and was trying to submit a late proposal. We can't accept it. Are we hard-nosed? Do we have no heart? No, I can't tell you how bad I feel when those situations occur, and that's why I try so hard to stress it at any training event I go to with any vendor. is that you got to get your proposal in by the due date and due time. We've had deaths in the family. We've had people come in. We've had courier services come in that have said that they're going to get fired. We've heard that some have gotten fired. And again, we have hearts. We feel bad. But at the end of the day, we have to have some closing time, some closing due date, and we have to be fair to all firms who respond. Most of our solicitations, and these are the formal solicitations, are going to be on the street for at least 30 days. Most. There might be a few exceptions here and there, but they're going to be clearly stated on the solicitation document. They're going to be clearly stated on our website. If you come to visit our office, they're going to be clearly stated on our bulletin board. So please, please, please pay attention to those due dates and due times, and any amendments, remember what we talked about before, any amendments that might change that. It's very important. We had the vice president of a company call our office. This was a huge, a multi-million-dollar contract, and their proposal did not get in on time. This was a huge company. They spoke to the first they spoke to the front desk. They spoke to the procurement specialist. They spoke to the manager. They spoke to me. Then they called David. And again, same information. By law, we cannot accept late proposals or late bids. And if we accept one that came in at 3:01 that was due at 3, what about the firm who submits it at 3:02? What about the firm that submits it at 3:03? And sometimes we all might want to go home at some point. So there's got to be a cutoff point, and we've got to create a fair, level playing field. So again, the one thing I want you to leave here with is most of our solicitations are on the street for 30 days. You don't have to wait until day 30 to submit your proposal. If you use a courier service, if you use the U.S. Postal Service, please make sure you follow up to ensure that they have delivered it to the right location. We have had instances where people have delivered it because it was a proposal for economic development. They've originally gone to that office to deliver it. Luckily, the manager of that office that works very closely with our office happened to be taking a restroom break and happened to be walking by their front desk and saw something that he thought might be a proposal and asked and literally grabbed that person's hand and ran to our office. And this is like across a parking lot, across the street, and got that firm to our office on time. But again, you really need to look at it's not who the work is being done for, but it's got to be delivered to our office by the due date and due time. Do I need to say that again? No. So please make sure, I want all your hard work and efforts to pay off, and the only way that I can ensure that is to make sure that we can consider your proposals or bids. Any discrepancies, questions are raised as early and prior to the closing due date and time. Again, we've heard in some instances, even after pre-bid conferences or pre-submission conferences, where people will kind of come to us on the side and say, well, I really didn't want to ask this question, or I don't know if it's okay to ask, or, will that mean like I'm going to be blacklisted or something if I ask a question? And no, believe me, you will be doing a service to us and to the county if you do have questions or something's really bothering you about something that's out there, if you ask it prior to the closing date and time, because that's when we can really make an impact and consider it and make the changes so that it can benefit everyone. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. If you see discrepancies, let us know as early as possible. Keep abreast of the RFP opportunities and if there are pre-submission conferences. A lot of times we hold pre-submission conferences and we'll look and there might be like 5 companies there. We might get a lot more proposals afterwards. But this is a pre-submission conference really is an opportunity on multiple fronts. It allows you to meet the folks you might potentially be working with because the using department is represented. The folks that you're actually going to do one-on-one work with, if you get the project, are represented. People from the Office of Procurement are represented. A lot of times, depending on what it is, people from the Office of Business Relations and Compliance are represented. A lot of times people say, well, but this project is too big, or, I can do this area, this is my core area, but I really, don't do anything in this regards. And I say, come to a pre-submission conference or pre-bid conference. You can see other firms there who might be interested. You might be able to develop a team approach, a joint venture. You might meet someone who needs a particular skill set, but they're more than willing to do the actual proposal submission, and that way you might be able to enter into as a sub. Look at every possible opportunity there is out there and don't discount any opportunity. Pre-submission conference is also where you can raise questions one-on-one. You can also hear questions, and this is great if you're kind of first coming into government work. If you go to pre-submission conferences, you can hear the types of questions being asked. If you're not that familiar, and there are firms who've been submitting it year after year after year, you can hear the types of questions they have on a particular solicitation and benefit from that before you might decide whether you want to respond or not. And then lastly, what I'll end is with debriefings, and I'm going to give you two parts of a debriefing. A debriefing is an excellent opportunity that if you are not the successful offerer or you are not the successful bidder, that it gives you an opportunity to talk to the chair of the evaluation committee about your proposal, not about anybody else's, but about your proposal, and really go over with them what were the strengths, what were the weaknesses, so that the next time you submit a proposal or a bid to the county, you can really take those strengths and weaknesses into account and modify your approach accordingly. We have had firms that have done debriefings and really taken it to heart and are submitting proposals and have then gotten awards because each time you submit it, you get better each time. One thing we do not do for debriefings is a debriefing is not intended to be a discovery tool. So if there is a firm who's upset or who wants to protest, they certainly have that right, but debriefing is not a tool to kind of bash out, okay, what is all the other firms doing, or what is their proposal, or show it to me, or I want to see this. There's a different avenue and there's different procedures for those types of things, and they're listed right there in each of our solicitation documents. But again, I strongly encourage each of you who participates in the process to, number one, participate. Number two, really understand that first, you got to get your proposal in at the due date and due time. Number two, make sure you've emphasized the evaluation criteria and the method of award. Number three, not discounted the importance of really having a complete package, reviewing your package, making sure it's collated. You don't want to miss any sections and end up getting a 0 for that particular section. And then lastly, if you are not successful, do not give up. And contact our office or the technical contact for that QSC debriefing. It will really help bring to light what were the strengths and weaknesses. And at the end of the day, on a particular solicitation, there may have been 3 or 4 firms that had, great proposals that were submitted. The point difference may only have been in a couple of points, and so it's not that you really did anything particularly wrong. It may just be that there were a couple other firms who did just as great a job as you did and may have had just 1 or 2 things that were slightly different that bumped their proposal higher. But a debriefing can really help you, especially if you haven't had one before or you haven't really done a lot of proposals with a government agency, to really understand what was it that an evaluation committee was looking for or didn't see in your particular proposal, and that way next time you can do it just that much better. And with that, I'll end the presentation, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
I have 2 questions. One, you had talked about amendments.
Yes.
And maybe I didn't hear the
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
What is your expectation when you receive an amendment back? Are you looking for just the signature page or
Yes.
the entire amendment document?
No, usually an amendment may, and that's a good question, because an amendment may have 13 pages with it, because there may be certain pages that have changed we want you to be aware of. There may be certain forms that we updated as part of the amendment, and we may include that. But for the solicitation amendment, we just need your signature and your date, your company information, so that we know that you're aware of it, that you've understood it, and that you're agreeing to it. So it's really that first cover page that you're signing back and including as part of your submission. Because whatever came after that, if it was amended pages or amended forms, we're assuming you're going to take that information and adjust your proposal response accordingly, or use the updated forms when you're submitting it. We have had instances where people acknowledge an amendment, and then they forget about the actual form itself, and they submit their pricing on the old form. And if the new form has enough material changes, then again, they're not going to get the full points. So you want to make sure, what we're looking for is that you've acknowledged it and that you're agreeing to whatever was part of that solicitation amendment. But then there's a part two, and that is in your actual proposal, you need to address what those changes were. Yes?
You have one more.
Sure.
This is actually on the evaluation committee.